How's it going, everybody out there? Rosendo from MLH here, and I just wanted to jump on the stream and let y'all know that you're joining in with awesome, an awesome developer by the name of Julian Duque from Salesforce, and he'll be walking us through how to build your first Node.js web application on Heroku. So we're just gonna, we're gonna wait for folks to start getting onto the stream. I just want to let y'all know if you have any questions ever throughout the stream, just drop them into the comment section here. Feel free to just add your questions. Great, we've got people joining in. Hello, how's it going? How's it going? All right. Looks like we've got a crowd building. Amazing, amazing. Where's everyone joining us from today? Drop your location in the chat. Let us know. All right. We've got India in the house. Excellent, excellent. We've got Nepal. We've got Austin, Texas. We have looks like a dog of some sort. Nepal, Bangladesh. Awesome. Great to see everybody. We're going to just hold off while we get more folks joining the stream here. How's it going, Aerosol Can? How you doing? All right. This is great. So, just once again, for those of you just joining us, this is going to be a workshop on how to build your first Node.js web application on Heroku. We've got Julian from Salesforce with us today. He'll be walking you through step by step, doing a live coding session and just kind of, doing something that is going to be a little bit impromptu, but you'll be able to follow along as you wish. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring him up on the stream here. So let's go ahead and give a warm welcome to Julian. How's it going, Julian?
Hello, Rosendo. How you doing? And good to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be joining this amazing group of folks. And let's see what we can learn today. I have some content that I want to share, something that I'm very passionate about. And let's create our first Node.js application using Node.js and some libraries part from the Node.js ecosystem. And we are going to be taking this application live to Heroku. Some of you might be familiar with Node.js and JavaScript. If you already know Node.js and you're already capable and able to build applications with Node, stay, because I want to show you one of the most performant frameworks to build applications with Node.js. Even though if you already have a lot of experience, my plan is for you to learn something new as well. If you don't know anything about Node.js or JavaScript development, don't worry. I'm going to be trying to teaching you the basics to build a web application using Node.js with tools that are open source and are available for you. But the full application is already built. So you will be able to have the code and deploy the code, explore the code, modify it, and learn from it. So this session, it's going to be targeted to all of the different audiences. I'm seeing that there is a lot of folks in the chat. They're joining from all over the world. So thank you very much for spending your time with me in this hour or so when we are going to be building this web application. My name is Julian Duque. I am a lead developer advocate at Salesforce, working also a lot with the Heroku team. I am originally from Colombia in South America. So my native language is Spanish, and I'm also a content creator. I create a bunch of educational content in Spanish as well. So you will be able to follow me on my YouTube channel. Rosendo is going to be sharing some links. I also have a very active Twitter account where I am sharing educational content and some other personal hobbies that I also do. For example, role-playing games. I'm a very nerd person into TTRPGs and those kind of games. And my DMs on Twitter are open. If you have any questions after this session, feel free to send me a message and I will be more than happy to reply to you. I am way more accessible through Twitter than through my email. So feel free to follow me at Julian_Duque. Rosendo is also going to share the Twitter account, or you can see it here on my screen. And let's connect. Let's engage. So, what are we going to be doing today? I'm going to be talking about Node.js, giving a very brief introduction to Node.js. I don't want to spend the full time like telling you about Node.js and all its wonders. Just want you to have an idea of what Node.js is and what it is used for. Then I'm going to be telling you about Heroku, what it is Heroku, and how are we going to be using Heroku today for our application. And I'm going to be making an introduction to Fastify. Fastify is going to be the framework or library we will use to build our web application. Then I will show you how to build this web application from scratch. We are going to start a brand new Node.js project from the terminal, and we will start adding pieces of code until we have a web application running. Some disclaimers that I want to tell you is, one, I am not going to be covering web development or front-end development per se. I am not a front-end developer, so my skill set is not building HTML or beautiful web interfaces or using CSS. I am a backend development, so I mostly spend most of my time creating backends for web applications. So we will be focusing more on the backend side of things. Even though this application have a front-end component using basic HTML and CSS, you will be able to adapt and modify the code I will provide to make it more appealing, and also changing certain features of the application depending on your needs. The idea is to teach some basic concepts about web development and how UI interface connects with a backend. And I will show you how to also implement an API route using the same library we are going to be using for our application. All the source code is available at GitHub. If you don't want to follow me to build this application from scratch, you can just clone the repo and follow the instructions on the repo. I will be showing you this later on the session, so you can follow the same steps as me and take a look at the code if you get a little bit lost while building this application. Let me go to the comments because I also want to see the comments. I'm getting some questions. For example, is Fastify developed by Salesforce? No, Fastify is an open source framework created by members from the Node.js community. It's part of the OpenJS Foundation, which is the foundation behind Node.js and some other JavaScript libraries. So this is not a Salesforce product. The only Salesforce product I'm going to be talking about is Heroku. Heroku, the place where we are going to be deploying our application, making our application available to the world, is a Salesforce product. All of the other technologies and libraries I am mentioning today are open source and available for you to use for free on any other platform. So there is another important question. Why not using Express? Even though Express is one of the most common Node.js frameworks, Node.js is stale. That project hasn't had any updates since a lot of years. It is not very performant. Is not getting any innovation. Fastify is one of the latest frameworks that is getting a lot of innovation, people working on it, and it is one of the most performant and fastest frameworks created. It is maintained and built by Node.js core contributors. so they know what they are doing, and it is a framework that is being used on the enterprise. Salesforce is even using Fastify in some internal projects. So this is what I wanted to talk about Fastify, and this is what I wanted to add value to the Node.js community. It is a very good framework, and learning it is going to give you way more tools to build web and Node.js applications. Okay, a lot of people doesn't know that Heroku is owned by Salesforce. It has been that for more than 10 years. But let's start with the session. Let's start with what we came here, and we can have like a Q&A later. So Rosendo or anybody behind can help me later with the Q&A, because I'm seeing a lot of comments right now that are happening. And I know how live coding works and how a live session works, because I also have a Twitch channel. If you follow me on Twitter, you are going to have my link to the Twitch channel. I mostly create content in Spanish, but I will start creating content in English as well. There is also a Node.js series that I created for Salesforce that Rosendo already has the link. If Rosendo can help me share that link. It is a playlist of 4 videos of how to create also web applications and APIs using Node.js. It is 4 hours long, where I'm going to more detail. What is Node.js, why it is important, how to create a web application, how to implement a database, how to integrate it with Salesforce, how to deploy it. So it is a more deeper session. Today, we are going to have an introduction, and things might be a little bit more fast, but the code is going to be available for you so you can learn more about Node. So let's go and take a look at my screen. I'm going to be talking about Node.js. Cool. Node.js, it's a JavaScript runtime to build server-side applications using JavaScript. What does that mean? JavaScript, it is the language of the web. The web browser you are using right now to watch this presentation has a JavaScript engine where web applications are running. But this is mostly client-side code that runs in your browser. Depending on the...
Hey, Julian,
yes.
I hate to interrupt. We had a little bit of a lag coming onto the stream, so I think some folks are like, right as you started explaining Node.js, I think some folks experienced the lag. So if you could just repeat back to the beginning of that, I'm really sorry.
Of course, no problem. Is the lag my lag or...
No, it's on the Twitch side. I think right now we're good to go. Like basically, like everything that we're producing right now is good. But I think some folks in the chat are saying that they missed the beginning part of your talk
the
about
most
Node.js.
Important one.
Yes, exactly.
Don't worry, I can start again. Always happy to do it. So, what is Node.js? Node.js is a JavaScript runtime to build server-side applications. What does this mean? Normally, JavaScript is the language of the web. The browser that you are using right now to watch this session and presentation has a JavaScript runtime embedded. And this is why you are able to run certain applications within your browser. But this is true for client-side code. It is code that is being run in your browser. Depending on the browser you are using, if it is Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Opera, Safari, depending on the browser, Firefox, they have a specific engine. Chrome, Edge, Opera, they use Chrome's V8 or Chromium, which is the open source version. It's a JavaScript engine created by Chrome that takes care of executing the JavaScript code within the browser. So Node.js uses the same JavaScript engine, V8, to run JavaScript outside the browser. So we are running JavaScript on our computer or on our servers. This is why it's called a server-side computer. Node.js was created back in 2009 pretty much to solve a very specific problem of creating network-based applications. Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node.js, he wanted to build a HTTP server that it was fully customizable. Back in the day, we used to use Apache or a very specific vendor closed HTTP server. Even though we had open source alternatives, it was a black box. We were not able to just have certain specific things of that web server. So Ryan Dahl decided to create a low-level version of this server that you can use a dynamic language like JavaScript that was going to be asynchronous in nature to build these network applications. So Node.js was born. Basically, the main use case was to use JavaScript to build network applications, HTTP, TCP, UDP, etc. But since JavaScript is a dynamic language, it is asynchronous, it is easy to learn, and there is a lot of web developers out there that already knew JavaScript, Node.js started to become a lot more popular. So not only network application started being created with Node.js, but also CLI tools, applications that are executed in the console. So right now, Node.js is one of the most used tools for these developer applications, like applications that you run on your terminal. If you are a modern web developer, you are already using Node.js. React, Angular, Vue, Webpack, all of these web technologies uses Node.js to be able to build their applications, and a lot of other developer tools are built with Node.js. Salesforce, for example, uses Node.js to create their developer tools. The Salesforce CLI or the Heroku CLI, the tools that we use on our terminal to interact with Salesforce and Heroku, they are built using a Node.js framework called Oakleaf. But what else Node.js can be used for? It started also to become very popular to create desktop applications. Using Node.js and the power of HTML and CSS, the power of web technologies, now we are able to create desktop applications using just web technologies. Tools like Visual Studio Code, the IDE that I'm recommending to use today for the workshop, it's fully created using JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and a Node.js runtime for desktop called Electron that was created by GitHub. And there is a lot of other tools that are also created with Node.js. For example, the Slack desktop application and some other popular desktop tools. So it's a very versatile runtime that not only can be used to build web applications, but also CLI and desktop tools. So investing time in learning Node.js, it's going to be good for your career. And it can give you an idea of a lot of different types of applications you can use. But I'm not going to be trying to sell you Node.js. It's already being used for almost all of the Fortune 500 companies. It's one of the most popular, not Node.js, but JavaScript is one of the most popular languages out there. I think it's the number one in the GitHub ranking. And investing time learning JavaScript is going to be very good for your career because it is the language of the web. What is Heroku? So Heroku, it's a platform as a service. So this is a concept from cloud computing that pretty much means that you will be able to have a platform to run applications. And a lot of the different infrastructure operations are going to be abstracted for you. You don't need to worry about the operating system, the amount of, the how to configure the database, the amount of CPU and memory, the network interfaces. A lot of different things are already decided for you. You have a platform and a set of developer tools that you will use to bring your application, the one that you create in your computer, to the cloud. And we will see today how can we take this application that we will create, or that I already created, if you can just download the code and run it in your computer and deploy it. How can we take that application from our computer to the world so all of the different users out there can be able to use it? We support many open source languages and technologies. So here you can see a list of the different officially supported languages. So we support Node.js, we support Ruby, Java, PHP, Python, and Go. And also we support Scala and Clojure, which are two languages part of the JVM, which is the same engine to run Java applications. So you are able to use Heroku to build any web application using these technologies. We also have other services that we host. We don't only are a platform for web applications, we also are a platform for data. So we support three main databases or data stores. One is PostgreSQL. It's one of the most popular and powerful open source SQL servers. And we will use PostgreSQL today in our application. We support Redis, which is a key value data store that runs in memory, that it's very good for caching and distributed applications. And we also support Apache Kafka, which is a more enterprise grade real-time data streaming server. Heroku is free. You can use Heroku for free. It has certain limitations, obviously, with the free account, but it's also used by big enterprises. There are like students and hobbyist developers that uses Heroku for their projects, but also big enterprises that uses Heroku to run their applications without worrying on the operation side of things. So for this workshop, and I think I sent the pre-requirements earlier, but for this workshop, you will need to have Node.js installed in your computer. You will need to have Git and maybe a GitHub account. It is optional. You will need to have the Heroku CLI installed in your computer. And Visual Studio Code, the IDE or the code editor, it is recommended. If you already have your own, the one that you like, it could be JetBrains, it could be BI, it could be Emacs, whatever you are comfortable with that support Node.js and JavaScript applications, you can use it. But the recommended, if you don't have or you don't use a JavaScript development environment, is going to be Visual Studio Code. And let me share one link. Is the devcenter.heroku.com/start. Let me paste it here in the chart, so in the chat, so Rosendo can help me do it. This is a very basic guide on how to start with Heroku. So you are going to be clicking Node.js and follow through the instructions here. So you will need to have an Heroku account. You will need to have Node.js and npm installed locally. And here it will teach you how to install the Heroku CLI. It will teach you how to log into your account, how to check that you have the proper versions running, and how to start with a very basic application that it's already created. This is for you to do it after the workshop or to do the preparation. Pretty much do everything like the first and second step. We don't need anything else. We are going to be going through the other steps during the workshop. If you want to follow along, if not, save that link, bookmark it, and you can watch the recording later and you can follow along later. But pay attention of what's going to be happening in the live coding later. Okay. Next is going to be Fastify. So I already mentioned that we are going to be using Fastify as our web framework. This is very fast and low overhead, so it's very performant. It's not going to be adding a lot of performance issues to your application. It's especially when you want to have a lot of users, a lot of customers consuming your web application. And it's created by Node.js core maintainers, people that know what they're doing. And Fastify has a very good ecosystem. If you go here to the ecosystem tab, you will see that there are a lot of core plugins that are already maintained by the Fastify team, and others that are created by the community. This is an open source project, and a lot of different people are creating plugins for Fastify. So you will find plugins to do authentication and authorization, to connect to a PostgreSQL database, to use GraphQL with Fastify, to use modern web technologies like Next.js, for example. There is a lot of different plugins that you are going to be finding here. We are going to be creating a web application using the basic fundamentals of Fastify. I'm going to be using the Fastify CLI to auto-generate a project. And then we are going to be adding certain plugins from here. We are going to be adding a views plugin so we can create views and templates using handlebars, which is a template technology. We are going to be using the Fastify static if we want to load the static resources like images or local CSS files. I'm going to be adding the PostgreSQL driver, and I'm going to be adding a plugin to handle form submissions. What are we going to build? So this is what we are going to build. It's called my blog, a Duque demo. Let me open. I already deployed this into Heroku. It's going to be a very basic web application. Remember, I told you, I don't do HTML or CSS development. I bet that you have way more talent than me to add that. So you will be able to add some color and some content to this web application. So I'm going to give you a very basic web application that has a blog. So we will create a blog, how to create a new post, how to list those posts, how to load the profile from the blog author. Right now, it only supports one user, but you will be able to modify it if you want to support more other users, etc. So it has a home with very basic information. It has an about section. This is loading this information from a database. So you will be able to add your own information in here and later update the layout and put this in a more beautiful state. It has a way to list all the posts. Right now I have 2 blog posts, how to deploy to Heroku, and I have 3. So you can see the posting here, and a form to create a new blog post. So we are live at, here is an example. And the idea is that we are going to be using Markdown to create the blog post content. This is a header. We are using Markdown to create blog content. So Markdown is a text-based format that is going to be converted to HTML when we load this information. So we submit this. This is going to be saved into a database. And now that it's on a database, you can see the blog posting here. As I mentioned, we don't have any sort of styling. So it will be your work to add some style so we can list this as a proper blog post. Okay, this is basically the application we will create. I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch. The code is already available, so you can go to the GitHub repository that Rosendo is going to be sharing, or Mary is going to be sharing the link with you all. It's on github.com/Julian Duque /MLH blog demo. And there are some instructions of how to install dependencies, how to create the Heroku app, how to create the PostgreSQL database, how to load the data, and how to run this application. If you want to do it right now, please go ahead, but I will tell you, hold, because I will show you how I built this from scratch. And let's learn what's the process behind it. Okay? Perfect. I have some questions. It is possible to get a what you see is what you get editor. It is possible. I mean, there is the code. You will need to find a plugin to do it. And instead of converting on Markdown, you will use and store the information in HTML. Everything is possible. The code is there and you will be able to update it and change it. Right now, I decided to do it with Markdown because normally most of the blogs out there, they support this format and it's very versatile. So there's going to be a lot of advantages if you also learn Markdown. For example, this documentation in GitHub, it's written using Markdown. If I show you the raw source code, it's Markdown. So this is the same format that I'm using for the blog post. It's just being rendered as an HTML, depending on where are you loading that information. Okay, let's start. First, we are going to use Fastify.js. And we are going to be creating the application from the terminal. So what do we need to create a Node.js application? We need to create a project, a Node.js project. And after having that Node.js project, we will start adding and updating certain things. Okay. So let's go to the terminal. I will install the Fastify CLI as a global tool so I can start generating my project. But let's wait a minute. I want to teach about NPM. What is NPM? Because this is something new. NPM is the ecosystem of libraries and packages for Node.js and JavaScript. So all of the different plugins, libraries, and tools are hosted in NPM. And NPM is a command line tool that it's already embedded in Node. When you install Node, you get NPM. So when you want to install a dependency or you want to install a tool, you are going to be using NPM. This is like the developer tool for Node.js. So I'm installing Fastify CLI. If I search Fastify CLI on the NPM, I get the exact web page of Fastify CLI, and I have a way how can I install Fastify and how can I use it. When I use the -g or --global, it will install it as a global command on my computer, and I will be able to execute certain commands. So let me show you. I'm installing the Fastify CLI as a global on my computer, pretty much following the first instruction from the documentation. This fetches the application from internet and install it locally on my computer. So now that I have Fastify CLI installed, I am able to execute Fastify. And if you can see, I have the same output. It is a command line tool that will allow me to create a new project or do certain other things. To create a new project, I'm going to be using the subcommand generate. So let's do Fastify generate and create a new name, MLH blog live. Because this is the live coding I'm doing right now. And if you can see, it created some source files. Let's go to that folder and open Visual Studio Code or the IDE of your choice to start working with this project. So let me show you what was generated. This is a Node.js project. You are going to identify a Node.js project because it has a package.json file. What is this file? This file is a description of the project, a description of the dependencies, and the different scripts or commands you can execute to interact with this project. So we are seeing that this project is called MLH Blog Live. It has a version. We can add a description, like a text description. It has a main file, which is the app.js. It has some scripts. Those are commands that I can execute to test the project, start the project, or start the development mode of the project. And it has some dependencies. These are the plugins that it uses in order to work. These dependencies are available on NPM. So they live on the NPM registry. Let me open the terminal. And after creating a Node.js project, the first step is to install the dependencies. Right now, if I try to run this project, I'm going to have an error. Let's see. If I do npm start, I'm going to be starting the project. I have an error because it doesn't have Fastify. It doesn't have the dependencies. But if I do an npm install, it will go ahead and read the dependencies that this project has, and it's going to be installing those dependencies in your computer. And it is installed per project. So you can see that now I have a Node modules folder where those dependencies lives. So each one of those also have dependencies and so on. So I have a list of modules, open source modules that are created by other people from the community that are going to help me to run this application. Now I will be able to do npm start. Now it starts, or I can use npm run dev to run the dev script. Why I'm using npm start and not run start? Well, there are like certain scripts that are standard. For example, the test and start, you don't need to use run to execute those. But you can create any other script here. You can create your own commands. And when you have a custom command, you will need to specify the run in order to it for npm to do it. And now I have a web application running on localhost on the port 3000. So I can go ahead to my folder, to my browser, and now the browser is showing me a web application, but it doesn't have anything. It just says root true. It is returning a JSON output. What is JSON? It is a data structure that let me specify data using a text-based format. JSON means JavaScript object notation. This is going to be similar to XML or other different text-based structure to represent data. And it's widely used in modern web development and on APIs. So basically, this is showing me that I can create an API that returns a JSON value using Fastify. And I also have another route, which is example. If I go to example, now we see that it returns, this is an example. We have not created anything so far. This comes with the basic application that Fastify created. Let's take a look at the code to see where these two things are coming from and what's the structure of a Fastify project. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, and we have one app.js file. The app.js file is going to be the main file for my application. And we have some documentation here. So please place here your custom code we are going to be adding some plugins and other dependencies here, but it tells us do not touch the following lines. So this is something that Fastify used to auto-load the plugins and auto-load the routes. What are the routes? Are the different URL paths that we are using for our application. In the application I created and we are going to create now, I'm using slash about, slash contact, slash post. Those are different routes that I created myself. And I'm going to be showing you how to create those. So far, we don't have any routes, just the ones provided by Fastify. If we go to the routes folder, now we see that we have root.js, which is the first one. This means the slash. So this one that I am loading here. And basically, this is defining a route. So Fastify works using the different HTTP methods. HTTP is the protocol for web applications, and HTTP supports different methods. Get, if I am getting or retrieving information. Post, if I am posting or sending information. Delete, if I am deleting information. Put, if I am updating information. Options is if I am just getting the options that I can have in interaction with my application, etc. There are like many different HTTP methods that you can read about them on the MDN, the Mozilla Developer Networks. They are like very well specified. We are going to be using two: HTTP GET to retrieve information and POST to submit information. So here I am telling my application that I am creating a GET route, which name is slash. So this is the root, the basic route of my application. And I have a asynchronous function, which is the handler. The handler is the one that is going to handle all my requests. So every time a client or a user goes to that route, this function is going to be executed. And it is an asynchronous function. So we can do asynchronous operations like loading information from a database, and we are not going to be blocking my application. So the application will continue running and this function will be executed. We have two different objects here. One is the request and the other one is the reply. The request contains the parameters or information that are coming from the client request. When a browser or an API client or a form are calling a route, it is sending certain information. Headers, a body, cookies, there are certain information that are being sent on an HTTP request, and they are going to be living here in this object. Reply is an object that Fastify uses to reply the answer to our users or the person that it's calling that request. Right now, it is returning, so we are not using reply. It also works by using return, since it's an asynchronous function, to return this JSON structure. So I can say something like this. Message, let's change this. Message. Hello, MLH. I save the file. Since I am running as a development mode, you see that now the server is listening again. So it restarts the server automatically. I can go ahead, refresh, and now I have a change. I have a different message. So I changed the output from my route. I can also have namespaces. I can also have like other type of routes with sub routes. We can create a folder. For example, this folder that I have here, conveniently named example, that has another index.js. If you see this index.js file, it's going to be the main file for that specific folder. And I am defining another slash route, but this slash route will live under example, under the example namespace. And this is returning, this is an example. This is the same as doing slash example. So now it is returning, this is an example. I can add another route, for example, here, Fastify get slash new async function request reply. This is a new example. I have, this is an example with the slash and slash new. This is a new example. So I can also on the example call slash new, and I have a new example. So now you get how can I create new routes for my application? But this is not very useful. I mean, it's useful if we have an API because we are returning a specific data. But Julian, I want to create a website. I want to return an HTML. And it is not going to be scalable if I write HTML here. And sure, I agree. Let's go to the next step. Let's create a view. What is a view? A view is an HTML view that can have dynamic data, data that will come from the backend and that will be injected into the view. So far, this application is what it's called or what is known as server-side render. All of the view is being created on the server and a pure HTML is going to be returned to the client. There are other modern web technologies like React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, Next.js, and all of those that are more client-side rendering. They have a lot of components that are loaded on the browser, and they load data calling an API. So right now, you have learned how to use Fastify to return data as an API, for example, as a JSON. And later, if you learn about React or these other technologies, you will be able to consume those API routes. Right now, I'm going to be showing you how to create server-side render routes. For that, we need a view. So let's go to the Fastify ecosystem. And there is a plugin called Point of View. Point of View has a lot of different template engine support for Fastify. So you will be able to use EGS, Pog, handlebars, Marco, nunjucks, etc. So let's open the Point of View documentation, and you will have some instructions of how to use Point of View. I will use handlebars. So what's handlebars? Let's open handlebars template. All handlebars.js. Handlebars is a minimalistic template engine written in JavaScript. It's also very popular as well. I like the syntax. It's intuitive and easy to use. So I will show you how to implement handlebars into this Fastify application. So let's go ahead on my Visual Studio Code, stop the process, and now install two new dependencies. So we are going to fetch these two dependencies from npm and add it to the project. So let's install Point of View and install handlebars. This is installing these two other dependencies here. Give me a second. Disable something. I still have notifications. Okay, cool. What happened? I downloaded both handlebars and point of view from npm, and if you check the package JSON, those dependencies are going to be part of the project. So now the project knows that we have two other libraries to install when we clone this project on a new computer. Then I need to register the plugin as part of my application. So I will need to enable handlebar support into my project. So let me place the custom code here. Register point of view. And wow, this is amazing. I am using a plugin called GitHub Copilot. It auto suggests a lot of code using AI. So it uses like a artificial intelligence that read my comments and uh, try to guess what I'm trying to do. So let me see if this is it's smart. Register point of view using handlebars. Do you think it's going to suggest do it with handlebars? Oh, nice. It does. So I do tab, and now it out-generate the code that I need. Awesome. Today I learned. Okay, but this I need to change. It's not that smart. So it is handlebars in here. Cool. So I am registering a new plugin for Fastify. So Fastify supports a bunch of different plugins that I already show you on the ecosystem page. I am requiring point of view is the one that has support for views. And then I am defining the engine that I'm using. For my project, I will use handlebars. What is required? Required is the way that Node.js has to load modules from npm or to load modules from the core libraries. You need to use the required function, give it a name, and it will require that information. Then I will need to specify by default, I am going to avoid this. By default, the layout. So layout is going to be the basic template. So I will have a basic HTML template and I will be injecting data into that template. So the header, the footer, and the content, the body. So let me have layouts. So I'm going to be using this folder for the layouts. Let me make it more simple so I don't overcomplicate this. It's going to be under templates and layout.hbs. And I will define two partials. Partials are going to be pretty much small pieces of code that can be reused. For example, the header and footer. That's something that I will use on my project. A header, which is going to be the navigation, and the footer, which will contain the copyright or some other links in the bottom. Since I specified that I will use the templates folder, I will need to create that folder on my project. So let's go ahead and create a folder. It's called templates. Inside that templates folder, I will need to create those three files: layout, header, and footer. So let's go ahead to this folder, create layout. Now create header and create footer. I am not going to be writing this from scratch. So you can go to the GitHub repo that I already shared, go to the templates folder, and you will find the files in there. Oh, but there is something. The header and footer are on the partials folder. So let's create a partials folder in here. Let me create a partials folder so we identify between the partials are like the small pieces and the full layout, which is the full template, or the other views. Good. So let me get the partials first. I have the footer. Let me get the footer. It's going to be very simple. You feel free to add way more content in here. The header is going to have some navigation. By the way, I am using Bootstrap for the CSS, so feel free also to use your favorite CSS framework to add a little bit more style to this project, add images, etc. And let me change the layout. And now with the layout, it's where I will be able to teach you how handlebars work. So here in the layout, I have a basic HTML page with Bootstrap, and I have a div that has 3 different handlebars tag. The header, I am using 2 brackets with this less than sign to inject the header. This means insert a partial. I am using 3 brackets here to insert the body. 3 brackets means unescaped HTML. So it is not escaping the HTML. It is injecting in as is. And here I am injecting the footer. So now that I have the layout, this is going to be the main template. What I need to start is defining the views of the specific routes. So let's create a view for our index, for our home. So let's create a new file, index.hbs, which will contain an HTML tag. Welcome to a name blog. This name, it's a variable that comes from the route. So it comes from the server before the view is loaded. So now you can see handlebars uses some replacement. So you pass a variable and it replaces that value using the brackets. Now we need to change the main route, the root. Instead of returning hello MLH, we are going to be returning the view. How are we going to be returning the view? We are going to use reply dot view, and first we specify the name of the view that we will specify, templates index.hbs. That's our view. We want to render the templates index here, and we will send a variable. In this case is going to be name MLH awesome. That's the name of the block, MLH awesome. Comma here. So this text is going to be replaced in this index when it's rendered. Let me run my server again. Hope we don't have any error. And let's go here to the one that it's running locally. Enter. And voila. Welcome to MLH Awesome Block. For some reason, let me inspect the code, or let me take a look at the source code. We don't have the layout. For some reason, it's ignoring the layout. I might have a typo, and the typo is that this is singular. It is layout, not layouts. If I refresh, now we have the basic template, which is the layout that has the CSS, the header, the footer, and it is injecting the other stuff. If I use the links, it will try to navigate to different routes. Some of those routes does not exist. For example, the about, posts, etc. But now you saw how can you basically create like the structure of a project. Let's continue adding some other things. So we need another plugin. The other plugin will be the Fastify static. What if we want to host an image from our web project, or we want to host a specific file? We need a static service. So we need to have a folder that it will serve static assets. So let's install Fastify static. Fastify static will serve that purpose. And let's create a public folder when we will serve that information. Okay, let's do the following. Let's register Fastify static. Register Fastify static and set. We don't want a prefix because I want it very basic. Let me see how I have it on my folder. Yes, I don't need a prefix. I'm just going to have it like this. Oh, I'm registering the Fastify static plugin and I'm telling it that the root folder is going to be public, the folder that I created. So I can have an image, for example, my avatar that I have here on the about. Let's copy that image. Let me go to public, fetch that image, copy image address. Let's change the name to avatar.jpg. Cool. I have an image on my public folder. It is my avatar. And let's see how can we serve it from my URL. So let's start npm run static, no, npm run dev, sorry. And run locally and do a slash avatar.jpg. And that's it. I am serving my file from my own server. So if you have any static files like images, CSS files, fonts, this is the way to go. Use Fastify static to be able to specify a static folder in your computer. This is not going to be handled by a route. This is not going to be handled by the normal request response lifecycle from Fastify. This is going to be serving the files statically on your application. Good. Let's implement the other routes, the about, posts, and contact, just to have those routes created. I am not going to be creating those by hand, but the idea is the same. For example, contact and about could be created from basically the root. These are going to be basic routes. So let me create it from here. Creating contact and about. And those two are going to reply from the templates. Let me pass the name on all of those three. So here I am returning three different views. About, I am returning contact with some variables. Let me change about to pass just a user instead of a variable. And let's create a user object with certain properties that we are going to be adding later. And let's create the files. So we need contact, HBS, and the other one is about HBS. Cool. Let me get those templates. So contact HBS. I have contact me. Then I have a task for you to load information from a database. I'm going to be covering the database in a moment. And the about, it's this page that shows a display name, an avatar URL, and a profile. So I'm getting three variables to show here. So let me update this object to add a display name. This is going to be, let's say, Julian Duque. Avatar URL, we have locally, right? And a profile will be developer advocate at Salesforce. And I'm passing that variable here. And in contact, we are not using the variable because we are not rendering any variables here. It's a basic form. It's just to have something to put information in. Let's run our code. Let's hope it works. Contact me, it loads the view. About, it renders the information, it fetches the information from the object and fetches the information here. And we need to create the posts. We don't have any route for posts. Let's introduce the database because we want to interact with a place where we want to store data. So we will use PostgreSQL for this. And this is an SQL database, a relational database where you can have a lot of information stored in here. I'm going to be using the database to store two specific entities or two specific tables. I will have one table for users and one table for posts. Users, we will have one, the information of my specific user. And post will have a list of different blog posts. Clear? Cool. So let me show you how the database looks like on the other project. This is the project that I already have created that you can fetch from GitHub. So I created this small database model. I am using a plugin for Visual Studio Code called ERD. If you use Visual Studio Code, you can install this ERD editor. This is to edit database tables, basically graphically using Visual Studio Code. So I have a users table that has an ID, a username, a profile, a display name, avatar URL, and a date to see when that user was created. And I have a posts table that has the ID, a relationship with the user to see who created that post. Maybe we want to have multiple authors in our blog post and have a specific profile page for those authors. That is possible. The title, the description, like a small description of the blog post, the content of the blog post, like the full body, and when was created. You can add more, you can add tags and add more different tables. This is just time constraint and demonstration purposes. I wanted to have it very simple. And this is going to be the SQL description language to be able to create those tables on Heroku. What do we need to create a database on Heroku? So you need two things. Well, first, it is recommended that your project is a Git repository. Why? Because Heroku supports Git-based deployments. So when you deploy an application to Heroku, you pretty much are sending the code to Heroku using Git. Second, you will need to create an Heroku application. It is a space where you are going to deploy the code. So let's do it by running Heroku create and adding a very unique name. For example, MLH log demo live, because we are live right now and I want to show you how to do it live. So now I created my application and it gave me an URL. If I open that URL, it says, welcome to your new app. We don't have anything yet there, but we have a space where we can deploy our application. And second, we need to create a database. So how can we create a database? By running Heroku add-ons, create Heroku, PostgreSQL, hobby dev. I have run this command multiple times, so I cannot memorize it, but where this come from? We have a marketplace, it's called Elements, elements.heroku.com, where you can find not only the add-ons we support, but others that's supported by other companies or members from the community. For example, we support Heroku Postgres. Heroku Postgres is the one that I'm showing you. And here you can find the command. This is how can you install Postgres in your application. We have a free version. That's the one I'm using right now. It is the hobby dev. It's for development purposes. The limitation is that we only have 10,000 rows. We can only store 10,000 blog posts. And a gigabyte capacity for storage. If you need more rows or more storage, you will need to be paying for the service. But for educational purposes, this is more than enough. But we also have support for other databases like MySQL, if you are more used to use that, MongoDB, etc. So I invite you to go ahead, explore the Heroku Elements Marketplace and find the technologies of your choice. I'm going to be using Postgres. It's my favorite. It's very performant, very popular as well. So let's use Postgres. So let's create the database. And voila. Now we have a database available for our application. What we need to do next is to create the tables on our database. So I will be doing it either from the CLI by opening the PSQL client using the PG command, like Heroku PG PSQL. Now I am basically on my database, but I am not seeing any relations or any object created. But I can do it going to my dashboard. This is Heroku.com or dashboard.heroku.com after I logged in. And let's find my newly created application, MLH Blog Demo Live. I have my add-on, which is the Heroku Postgres. I can click on it. and it will give me information about my database. And I have a way where I can run commands to my database using data clips. This is a graphical interface if you want to interact with it. I personally recommend for you to get used to terminal applications to use command line tools. So I will be doing it with the command line. So the project I shared on GitHub has a database.sql file. It has the commands to create the table and the command to insert information to the table. So let me move this and I will put the updates later. This should be first. Let me create the tables. I'm going to be creating posts, users, and the relationship on the database by copying that code and pasting it on my terminal. Now I created the table. So I should have, if I run the command \dt, it showed me that I have two different tables, posts and users. Good. Then I will insert information into the users table. I will be inserting into users a username, a profile, display name, the avatar URL. I'm using a remote one in this case, and the creation date. The creation date, I'm using the now function to say that I created the user right now. So let me copy the query. I paste it on my terminal and I created my information. So I do select all from users. Now I see that I have my information on the database. So how can I read this information from the database? I'm going to be showing this just how to read the information from the user. And then I will switch to the code that I already created. And I will show you how I did the blog post part, because that will take way more time to do it live. And now we have like an hour and 20 minutes with this workshop. But I will be going through the code, and then we can have some sort of QA section to see all of your comments that I cannot see right now because I'm doing this live. Okay, I have the user loaded. Let me quit my PSQL terminal here and go back to the code. Cool. So what I will do is the following. I have an about page. I have a route that is getting this information from a local object. I will get this information from the database. So how can I do that? First, I will need to add support to PostgreSQL. How can I add support to PostgreSQL? Again, let's go to the Fastify ecosystem, see if there is a plugin for that. And there is a plugin for that, Fastify Postgres. It allowed me to have a connection to a PostgreSQL database through the Fastify object. You can go ahead, click on the plugin, take a look at the documentation, how it's being used, etc. Let me do it on my project. So I'm going to be installing PG, which is the native driver for PostgreSQL for Node.js, and then Fastify Postgres. Install. I have dependencies. Go ahead, check it on the package JSON. I'm seeing that I have PG, Fastify Postgres, etc. So we are good to go. And let's register the plugin into my app. So register Fastify Postgres. It will try to guess. It does a pretty good job, the GitHub Copilot. I just only need to set up a couple more things, which is reject unauthorize, and that's it. What is this? First, we need a connection string. What is a connection string? It's going to be the fully qualified URL that has the username, password, server, port, and database name for this specific PostgreSQL database that we are going to access. Since we are going to be using the remote Heroku PostgreSQL database, we will need to get this information from Heroku. I will show you how to do it later. What is process.emb? Process.emb means that we are getting this database URL value from the environment. So we need to load this information into the environment when we are running our application. Heroku uses this. When you deploy the application to Heroku, it will try to fetch this information from the environment, but we don't have it locally. So we need to fetch that configuration into our local environment, and I will teach you how to do it in a moment. Since this application it will be used locally and on Heroku, we need to put this reject unauthorized on false to prevent certain warnings that we are not using secure connections. It's just a warning, but I don't want us to have any problems, so I'm disabling that warning. And that's it. I registered Postgres in my project. I am not doing any query, but before doing that, I need to configure this database URL variable. Gladly, since I'm using Heroku, I already have that variable on my environment in Heroku. I can check it by running Heroku config. If I run Heroku config, you can see that I have a database URL already. And this is the information we want. Don't copy paste it, because that is not the idea. The idea is not to copy paste it and leave it in the code. That's insecure. You don't want to be pushing this URL into GitHub or a version control. This is sensitive. Right now, anybody can access this database. If you get this information now live, you can access the database, but this is educational, and this database is going to disappear after this presentation. So I don't see any problem to share it with you, but this should be secret. How can we keep it secret? So I'm going to create a .emb file. This .emb file will contain this information locally. And this .emb file is going to be ignored on my git ignore file. So when I push the code to GitHub or to another public code repository, this sensitive information is not going to be there. It will only exist locally, right? Awesome. Then I will need to get this into my file. So you can run the Heroku config command passing the shell argument, and this will give you now the specific line that you will copy and paste into your .env file. Now this is what we want here in this file. Not in the code, but in this file. And second, let's use a library from Node.js called .env. I'm going to install this library locally, .env, and using the app.js file on the top, I will execute require .env.config. This loads any .env file that you have in your folder and fetches those variables and load it into the environment. So that way, next time we execute this application, now database URL is going to be populated by that value, and we will have access to our database. First step, done. We have our database configured. Second, let's do a query. How can we do that query? Go to the root file when we have specified the about route and do a PostgreSQL query. So let's go root and let's delete this. We don't need this. We are going to get this from Postgres. So I'm going to be getting all of the different routes, all of the different results from the query. And I'm going to execute using a sync await. So remember, I'm using a synchronous function and I am executing a promise. So I need to use a wait. Give me a sec. To be able to execute this promise and get the result. So I'm going to execute Fastify, the PG or PostgreSQL plugin, and a query. So the query will be select everything from users, limit 1. Just give me one result. That's it, the only one that we stored. And then I'm going to be using this extraction to get just the first position from that rows array and assign that value into the user variable. What is this? Let me do it in 2 steps because this might feel smart to some of you that have worked with JavaScript. So this is the same as doing results await and the rest of the code, fastify and simplify, and creating rows equals results.rows. I'm just extracting the rows properties in one step. This is called object destructuring in JavaScript. And this other instruction is the same as doing const user equal rows 0. Just like different ways using modern JavaScript to be able to extract values and assign those values into variables. Good. I just wanted to have it that way so it is not confusing. Perfect. So now I am getting the user object from the database. So what happens if I execute the development server? I execute the development server and I go ahead and open the about me. You see that I have the same information. So let's change it. Let's go to SQL and change it. So let's do Heroku PG PSQL. Select from users. Awesome. I have my user in there. And what should we update? Let's update the name. I would be, no, the title. Let's change the title, the profile. So let's do an update users set profile equals lead developer advocate at Salesforce, where ID equals 1. I updated my profile to say lead developer advocate. If I refresh, it says lead developer advocate. So now I'm getting the data from the database, not locally. As you can see, the changes are being reflected. I will switch to the other code, the code that you can clone from GitHub and we will explore more other parts from the code. This was the live part. As you can see, we added some other dependencies. We integrated our application with a database. We were able to render that information in a view. Deploy. Let's deploy, and then let's deploy these before switching to the other application. Sounds good? Sounds good. Let's do it. Let's quit. So now that I have a basic application working without the posts, because we have not implemented that, let's deploy. What do we need to deploy? First, we need to add our changes to the local Git repository. So let's add those changes. Let's create a commit. Read profile from DV. Now that we have our commits, we can do git push Heroku main. We are sending our code to Heroku using Git. What happens here is that Heroku detects that it is getting a Node.js project. So it detects that there is a Node.js application. It will install the dependencies. So internally, it is doing an npm install. So it can fetch Fastify Postgres, Postgres handlebars, etc. After installing dependencies, it's removing developer dependencies. We didn't show developer dependencies because we are not testing, or we are not using like local development activities. After that, it will create a container image, like an image that can be executed in their container environment, and release the application under this URL, MLH blog demo live. If I open MLH blog demo live, this will load the application that I just deployed. Let's see, let's wait until it gets loaded. We can check it on the dashboard. Here on my Heroku dashboard. Let me go to heroku.com. I can show you the blog demo live application, that it was deployed. Now the application is running here, but for some reason it's not loading. Try loading it in another tab. Maybe I have some connection issue. I don't know. Let's see until it loads. If not, let's switch to the other application, and eventually we will have that application loaded in there. Okay. Second, let's go to the code that we created. I have it here. It is the blog app. This is the full application. And I will show you how I implemented the post route. So if you see the app.js, pretty much we have everything is the same. The Fastify Postgres, the Fastify static, the views. If you go to the templates, you are going to see that we have all of the different views in here, but two new ones. One to show the posts and one to show a new form. And if you go to routes, you are going to see that there is a new folder called posts. I decided to create a new folder for posts because posts, we have more different actions than the others. So let's go to posts. And here I have three routes. One route is the main, which returns all of the posts. The second route is the new, is the one that lets me create a new post. And the third route is the new, but instead of get, it is a post. So this is the one I'm using to save the post information. I am saving it into the database. So I created a form that sends the title, the description, and the content. I get those variables from the body. Then I need to load the user because I need to create a relationship between the user and a post. And then I am using Fastify query, the Postgres query, to insert the post into the posts table with the different variables. So that's why I'm saving the post. And after saving, I am redirecting into the posts route. Okay. So the new form is just an HTML form that goes to posts new that has three different inputs: title, which is a text, description, which is a text area, and content, which is a text area. Those are the three variables that I'm getting here. And posts, what it has is a link to open the new form and an iteration using handlebars. So I'm iterating over an array, over a collection of posts, and each post I'm extracting the title, the description, and the content, and I am creating a article, pretty much an article section. Then with CSS and with design and with more HTML, you will be able to create a beautiful layout, organize the post. You can also modify the queries to fetch the author URL, etc., and get these on a better form. You have a bare bone application that you can update. Okay. Let's check the route for the posts. So I am querying the posts. I am getting the title, the description, and the content from the post. I am ordering those by creation date in descending order. So I get the latest first. And I am just showing the latest 10. I don't want to return 100 or 1,000. So this is a way to limit the amount of information I want to show. Then you will need to implement logic if you want to have some sort of a pagination using offset and limit. That's a technique that you can use if you want to implement pagination. And then I am doing an operation. So I am iterating over those posts, and I am updating the content and parsing the content using marked. Marked is another dependency that I installed. You can see it here on the package.json, marked, that parses markdown. So you can go to marked. This parses markdown. So it converts markdown into HTML. And I'm using that library internally in my project to do the conversion. In the README, you will find information of how can you install the dependencies locally, create the application, create the Heroku Postgres SQL database. How can you load this database? Before doing so, make sure you update the database file and change that information, because you might want to have your own name in there and your own URL. I am using Gravatar. It's a service that lets you post avatars and they will give you an URL. And after updating that information, make sure you can load this data and you can start playing with your blog post. Then if you want to deploy it to Heroku, make sure everything is pushed into Git. It doesn't need to be in GitHub. It's just your local Git, and run git push Heroku main. I think I have like some sort of error. Maybe I forgot doing something. That's something that it's good to see. It's live coding. Errors could happen. So it's telling me to explore the logs, and it says that the web process is failing. This is amazing. I have the opportunity to teach you something. So what I'm missing here is the following. Fastify by default binds the project on the local IP, which is 127.0.0.1. Heroku needs this application to be available on a more open IP, which is the 0.0.0.0. So I need to change Fastify and tell you are going to have an address of 0.0.0.0. And only do that on the start. This is just if you are starting from scratch. Just on the start, which is the command that is run by Heroku, which is the production command, so Heroku can detect that this application is running and can listen. So let me try a deploy again. Git status, add that package JSON, commit, setup address, and do another git push Heroku main. This will trigger a redeploy, so it will send the code back to Heroku. And this will be the same process if you make changes to your code and you want to redeploy. You make changes to the code, you do a commit, and you push again to Heroku. So now I am pushing to Heroku. Let's wait until Heroku creates a release. Waiting. It's building, compressing, and we will have a release in just a moment. And done. 41 seconds took Heroku to deploy our application and run it. Now I can restart, and now it started. Now it is working. Awesome. So this is the one we created just with the about, and the about is getting the information from the database. Whew, it worked. Awesome. So that was pretty much all the content that I had for you. So you had the repository. Remember, MLH blog demo. If you have any specific question, you can either file an issue. If you want to propose improvements, you can file and open a pull request. Go ahead and fork it, clone it, update it, make it yours, make it your code, change the CSS, try different plugins, try adapting this code to your own specific use case, to your own specific project, make it yours. And remember, I am on Twitter. If you have any questions, you can go to Twitter, send me a private message. I have those private messages open, and I will go ahead and reply from there. And let's see, we have some questions right now from the chat. Let me see. So I installed Fastify on Windows 10 as global, still having error. Fastify is not an internal or external command. Okay. There is something that sometimes happen with global commands, either on Linux, Mac, or Windows. It's depending of how you install Node.js. My recommendation is to install Node.js using Volta. Volta is a JavaScript tool manager that installs Node.js in a way that all of those global commands are going to be managed by the specific user, not by the global user. And it has a more smarter way to handle those binaries. Volta is supported on Mac and Linux just by running this command, or if you go to the installation guide, there is a Windows installer. So you can install Volta on Windows, and after you install Volta on Windows, you will be able to use it. That's the same I use, for example, internally, and I have never had that issue. So if you go install Volta and then with Volta install Node.js and you go ahead and install any global command, you will not have that issue. Otherwise, you will need to specify a path manually. So you will need to go to Windows Setup and set the global node modules as a path, and that can be a hassle in certain conditions. So for me, the best option is to use a tool like Volta that handles all that for me. No, if you reinstall Volta, it will not affect your Node.js application or your Node.js runtime. You can even use Volta per project. You can have a specific Node.js version per project if using Volta. I mean, I have never had those kind of issues, and the project will be the same. The project will not change. It is just code. The Node.js is the runtime that it's behind, and it will not affect your project at all. My link to the GitHub was shared. Maybe Mary can help me sharing that link again. I am making it a little bit more bigger. It's github.com/Julian Duque or Julian Duque. I don't know. Sometimes in English it's hard. MLH blog demo. I will share it on the private chat so it could be shared to people. Okay, yes, it's in there. Maybe if that's that can be put on the screen somewhere. But yes, this is the repository that you can use for the project. And I just remembered that I need to send a change that I did. So let's do it right now. I need to change my database files, update db files, and let me do a push. Git push origin main. And now you have those changes as well. Fantastic. And in the README, you have the instructions. How can you run this project locally and how can you deploy this project to Heroku? Thank you, Mary, for sharing the link. Yes, all the problems you are having right now with those global commands are going to be solved with Volta, or I can teach you another trick if that doesn't work. Instead of running npm install global, you can do npx. npx Fastify CLI will do a temporary installation of that command, and you will be able to install that command just by prefixing the npx command. npx is the npm runner for external commands. So you can do npx Fastify CLI generate, and that will work. Example, npx Fastify CLI generate a new project, that will work. The main problem with this is every time you will try to run the command, it will fetch the code because this is just a temporary solution. But if you cannot install globally and if you are getting errors, use npx and those issues are going to be fixed. Okay, I think that's it from me. Thank you very much for joining me in this session. I hope you have learned a lot about Node.js, about a new framework, which is Fastify, how to start creating your first application with Node, and how to deploy that application to Heroku. Remember that Heroku is also for other languages. I am a big Node.js advocate, and I've been working with Node.js since 2011. But I have also worked with other languages like PHP and Java and Python, and Heroku is also a great platform for those. So if your learning path is taking you to use other different languages, keep trying Heroku for your projects. It's a very great tool for learning, for creating MVPs, for experimenting with code, and also for taking your projects to production so other users can take advantage of them. Yes, I teach Node.js on YouTube. My YouTube channel, it is YouTube with my full name. I'm going to be sharing my link. The thing is that all of my content is in Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, you will have a lot of content to consume here on my YouTube channel. I have also created some content in English for the Salesforce developers YouTube channel. Salesforce developers YouTube channel, you can find some other content that I have created. If you go to playlist and if you search for Node.js, I have two series, one series in Spanish and the other in English. I have like a 4 or more hours of content speaking about Node.js, how to use Express, different frameworks, how to integrate with different database modules, how to integrate a Node.js application with Salesforce, etc. So there is also more content that you can consume in there. And I also tweet information on my account and some resources, so you can follow me there and we can keep in touch. Let me see, we have more contents. Yeah, if you don't speak Spanish, go ahead on the Salesforce developers YouTube channel, and there is content in English for you as well. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope this has been useful for you. I hope you get inspiration for your projects. I hope you also get inspiration to keep learning JavaScript, learning Node.js, learning how to implement web application, and exploring, why not, for other type of projects. So remember, my name is Julian Duque, lead developer advocate at Salesforce. You can keep in touch with us at Salesforce Devs or in our website, which is developers.salesforce.com, and looking forward to join you on another opportunity. Thank you very much and see you on the next time. Bye bye.